Is Jaylen Brown hiding more than he's showing? The dunk was loud, the swagger louder, but beneath the surface, is the Celtics' most volatile weapon skating on the edge of disaster? For all the calm reassurances and clinical stat lines, Game 1 of the Celtics series against the Magic brought something far more important than a win. It brought a warning shot, a reminder that even superheroes limp sometimes. Brown's 16 points may not leap off the page, but the real story wasn't told in box scores. It was in the grimaces he tried to hide, the split-second delays in explosion, the subtle, almost imperceptible adjustments to his landing mechanics. ESPN's bombshell report, the pain-killing injections, the murmur of chronic discomfort didn't just raise eyebrows. It cracked open the door to a possibility Boston has tried desperately to ignore. Their finals MVP is not 100%, but here's the plot twist that nobody's ready to entertain. What if Jaylen Brown isn't healing? He's hiding. When Brown elevated for that two-handed jam in the third quarter, it wasn't just a highlight, it was a statement. The kind made by someone who knows that perception shapes reality. The kind made by a player trying to control a narrative before it controls him. "I'm not here to talk about my knee," he told reporters, dismissive, almost irritated. That's not normal deflection, that's fear disguised as focus. And let's not pretend this is just another "he'll be fine" moment. This is a player with a history of soft tissue concerns, now pushing through an issue serious enough to warrant injections. A player who sat out 8 of Boston's final 24 games. A player who Boston cannot afford to lose, not just for his scoring or defense, but for the psychological edge he gives this team, the snarl, the defiance, the fire that often ignites everything else. The Celtics can talk all they want about minute management and no restrictions, but what we saw in Game 1 wasn't a player unleashed. It was a man negotiating with his own body in real time. A man who scored 10 of his 16 points in the third quarter because he knew he wasn't going to be out there in the fourth. And still, he was the difference. Boston's third quarter surge, the one that broke Orlando's spirit, was led not by Tatum or White, but by a limping lion refusing to back down. Brown bullied his way to the rim, got into passing lanes, disrupted Orlando's rhythm. It wasn't pretty, it was survival. But here's the uncomfortable question no one wants to ask. In Boston, what happens when the adrenaline fades? What happens when they're no longer facing the Magic, but the Bucks, or the Knicks, or Denver? Teams that will hunt him, teams that will test that knee on every possession. What happens if that fire in his game is the only thing keeping him from crumbling? Joe Mazzulla wants us to believe everything's fine. He's right where we need him to be, the coach said. But that's coach speak. You don't sit a star player the entire fourth quarter of a playoff game unless there's a reason. The truth is this: Boston's repeat hopes might be balancing on cartilage and courage. And if Brown's knee gives out at the wrong moment, there is no backup plan. This isn't a team with a third star hiding on the bench. This is a roster built on balance, cohesion, and 2 alpha wings. Remove one, and the entire system teeters. Maybe that's why Brown sounded almost emotional post-game. "Some people definitely have been praying for me," he said. "You don't say that after just a sore knee. You say that when you know how fragile the path ahead really is." And here's the hot take no one dares to explore. Should the Celtics rest Brown now to save him for later, even if it risks a few early games? Conventional wisdom says no, but how much are they willing to gamble just to dominate round 1? If they sweep the Magic and lose Brown in the process, was it worth it? Bradley Beal laughed off the Jrue Holiday comparison. Now it's haunting him. When Mike Budenholzer told Bradley Beal to emulate Jrue Holiday, it wasn't a suggestion, it was a cry for help. The Suns were sinking. The roster, though star-studded, on paper was bleeding chemistry and direction. And in the middle of that chaos, Budenholzer dared to offer a roadmap, a lifeline, one that Beal arrogantly dismissed. Now, months later, as Jrue Holiday quietly dismantles playoff opponents with surgical defense and unselfish poise, Beal's resistance to that comparison looks less like pride and more like delusion. According to Chris Haynes, Budenholzer challenged Beal mid-season to be the Jrue Holiday of this team. In Beal's mind, that was an insult. He was brought in to be Bradley Beal, the high-volume scorer, the highlight machine, the name on the marquee, not some scrappy, low-key defender who takes single-digit shots and lets others have the spotlight. But maybe that's exactly why Phoenix failed, because what Budenholzer understood, and what Beal refused to accept, is that winning in the playoffs isn't about who gets the most touches. It's about who's willing to sacrifice, to pivot, to play chess while others play checkers. And Jrue Holiday, he's the grandmaster. Look at Game 1 of the Celtics Magic series. Holiday had just 9 points. That's it. No flashy box score, no ESPN highlight reel, no "he dropped 40" headlines. But here's what did happen. The Celtics completely shut down Orlando's perimeter attack. Derek White exploded for 30 points, and Boston took a commanding win without overextending any of its stars. Holiday was the glue, the adult in the room, the stabilizer. He didn't need to score, he just needed to impact. Compare that to Beal's year in Phoenix, where every game felt like 3 soloists trying to harmonize without ever rehearsing. It wasn't a team, it was a jam session gone wrong. Beal's refusal to embrace the Holiday role wasn't just tactical, it was philosophical. At his core, Beal has never wanted to be a role player, and fair enough. He spent a decade in Washington as the guy, putting up gaudy numbers on terrible teams. But the moment he arrived in Phoenix, the dynamics changed. No longer the alpha, he had to share the stage with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. He could have adjusted, could have simplified, could have become dangerous in a different way. Instead, he bristled. It's not just that Beal didn't want to be Jrue Holiday, it's that he never even considered that Holiday might be more valuable to a championship team than he is. And that's the twist no one talks about. Jrue Holiday has already done what Beal never has. Won it all, and not by being the guy, but by doing the dirty work. In Milwaukee, he hounded Chris Paul into submission during the 2021 finals. In Boston, he's doing it again, rotating, switching, sacrificing. No ego, no agenda, just winning. Meanwhile, Beal sat courtside as Steph Curry torched the Suns in meaningless games. He became a high-paid observer, a third option who played like he wanted to be first, but didn't earn it. Worse, his production didn't justify his resistance. He wasn't a 30-point-per-game killer. He wasn't an elite defender. He wasn't even consistent. He was there, present. And that's it. Is Joe Mazzulla a mad genius or just mad? The bizarre incident that left everyone speechless. What kind of coach stares down an injured superstar and screams, "Get up," while holding back the medical team? A lunatic? A visionary? Maybe both.
Officials will obviously look at that.
On Sunday night, in a moment that felt like it belonged more to a war film than a basketball court, Celtics head coach Joe Mazzulla did something that sent shockwaves through the NBA.
You got to be aware of him at all times. Tatum tries the jam, goes down hard.
And raised questions even his most loyal supporters might struggle to answer when Jayson Tatum, the face of the franchise, a finals MVP, and the players, carrying Boston's hopes for back-to-back titles, hit the floor, clutching his wrist in clear agony. The entire arena held its breath. Trainers moved to storm the court, a standard protocol in these high-stakes playoff moments. But then, out of nowhere, Mazzulla extended his arm and stopped them cold. No, really. He physically prevented the Celtics staff from approaching Tatum and barked out a cold, jarring command. "Get up, wait." What? Let's be clear. This wasn't some preseason hustle drill or motivational ploy in a timeout huddle. This was Game 1 of the playoffs, the Celtics' first step in their title defense, and their best player was on the ground, possibly injured. Yet Mazzulla, with the demeanor of a battlefield commander, refused immediate medical attention. Why? Because in his world, vulnerability seems to be a choice. Pain? An illusion. Medical protocols? Mere suggestions. This wasn't strategy. It was philosophy. It was Mazzulla's worldview bleeding out into the hardwood.
He's taking on that challenge, and You know, he knows that we need him out there, and you know, we understand that he's fighting through and trying to give it his all, and you know, we appreciate that. And you know, I think game after game is just get more comfortable out there. But you know, he did his part tonight and contributed to us getting a win.
This kind of behavior might play well in a movie, fitting perhaps, given Mazzulla's infamous obsession with The Town, a film he reportedly watched so obsessively that Celtics personnel staged an intervention. But in real life, it toes a dangerous line. Imagine the message it sends. If you're Tatum, do you feel empowered by your coach's challenge or betrayed by his indifference? If you're a role player watching from the bench, are you inspired or terrified that the same fate awaits you if you ever go down? And perhaps the biggest question of all, what if Tatum had torn a ligament? Would the coach still have yelled from the sideline, daring his star to rise on a fractured wrist just to prove a point? Yes, we've all seen the headlines about his quirks, the avoidance of revolving doors, the decision to stop chewing gum because it distracted him from his thoughts, the unflinching stare he holds during timeouts, like he's decoding the Matrix. Until now, these were harmless eccentricities, odd footnotes in the story of a coach who seemed to thrive on being different. But this was something else. This was defiance against the norms of sports medicine, player safety, and even basic empathy. It wasn't just a refusal to let the trainers do their job. It was a psychological gauntlet thrown at the feet of a man who's already given everything for this franchise. Is Joe Mazzulla trying to mold a team of mental warriors by breaking them down in real time? Or is he letting his own complex, almost fanatical relationship with toughness cloud his judgment on the sideline? It's worth remembering that Mazzulla wasn't just handed the Celtics job. He inherited it under fire. A franchise rocked by scandal, a team in flux, and a fan base desperate for redemption. And maybe, just maybe, in order to survive that storm, he built a mental fortress so rigid, so unforgiving, that now even compassion looks like weakness. And here lies the darkest thought of all. What if Mazzulla doesn't trust his players unless they suffer? What if, to him, the only proof of greatness is a man playing hurt, bleeding, dragging himself through pain, not because it's necessary, but because it's expected?